Welcome, Drink with James, episode 82 for this year, to try and better myself. This is tough for me, guys. You know, I'm physically and mentally preparing myself for another hard week. I have another NetJets trip this week. I know it's something, you know, it's my cross that I have to bear, that we have a client that is a private aviation client, and they want us to go on these trips with them. But like Jesus, it's, you know, he had his cross, I have mine, and I think I bear it with what do I want to say, with honor and without a lot of complaint. But yeah, we're going down to Grand Caymans this week for some incredible food festival. So if you follow me on Instagram, you will have already seen that, and this will be old news to you. If not, you can take a slide over and see what we did. I'm sure it was awesome and elevated and chic and not cold. I've been cold for at least a month now, and I'm looking forward to the feeling of sunlight on my skin, which is turned almost translucent. So I've been preparing mentally for that. I've also been preparing physically. Like all of the rest of you, I maybe let myself go a little bit in the holidays. I actually haven't worn this suit in like 2 or 3 weeks because of some of the extra weight that I've been carrying, and Tom Brown suits are cut quite high. So if you are carrying a few pounds, it's incredibly uncomfortable. Let me actually just say, it's uncomfortable when you're slim. It's even more uncomfortable if you're carrying a couple pounds. So I have been working out twice a day and to prepare myself for this trip. I'm feeling ready, but excited to go down there this week. I'm sure you guys will see that. What else is going on? We've got, hopefully you guys have seen the year in review stuff. You will have gotten one about your content, one about your following, with another one coming out tomorrow, Tuesday. Right? Today. Another one coming out today, which is going to be travel. So we're really excited about this. It was really fun to put together. Hope you're enjoying it. If you haven't gotten them, check your email again, because you definitely should be getting it. This is the first thing that we've done with Insta stories, that every single person in the community will be getting these stories. So I hope you guys are getting it. I hope you're posting it. I hope it's fun. We've certainly, I can already say in the future that we're enjoying seeing it come through and seeing everyone post it. These are really fun days for us to see you guys excited about this stuff, and we love building it. So with that, let's move on to questions. Post it. These are really fun. See welcome, Drink with James. I would just move on to the question 1. New York Fashion Week is coming up, which is, first of all, fucking crazy that New York Fashion Week is already coming up. But what should I be doing? I've gotten a couple questions about this, right? We just sent out the RSVP for Fashion Week. Hopefully you saw the New York Fashion Week registration go out, but I've gotten a few questions from influencers saying, okay, I registered for Fashion Week, this is my first one, what should I do? We have answered this question before. I've answered this question before, but I think it's worth answering again, and also we're 82 episodes in, and I have no idea when I answered it last. So, how do you get invited to Fashion Week? Great question. First, I think we'll say, you know, Fashion Week has changed so much in the last few years, and I think it will continue to change. It was really a place for magazine editors and buyers to come see collections before they were in stores, and buyers would actually buy pieces from the shows, and obviously editors would be talking about trends and talking about specific collections. You know, 10 years ago, I think one of the first bloggers to go to a show was Tavi, and it made headlines. And from that time, there's been more and more seats available to influencers and bloggers, right? And there's always this back and forth between the editors and the buyers and bloggers and influencers, and has this become a zoo, and is this a bubble, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But as it stands today, you know, there is a huge portion of the audience that is going to be influencers at any given show. And so even if this is your first Fashion Week, you've never done it before, there's definitely an opportunity for you to do something interesting, to get invited to shows, but it's also important, I think, to understand, you know, I think it's also important to not expect too much on your first Fashion Week. I have influencers reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to get into the Marc Jacobs show, and there are people who've worked in the fashion industry for years, who've been editors, who still don't get invited to the Marc Jacobs show. So you have to understand that there are certain shows that are very, very difficult to get into, and you probably will not. And understand that building relationships with these brands and going to Fashion Week and getting invited to the good shows is a process, and it's sometimes a multi-year process. But if it's something that you're interested in and you want to pursue, you do have to start somewhere. So if you're just starting out, there's a few big agencies that handle a lot of the shows. KCD, LaForce, HL Group, PR Consulting. There are a lot of other agencies that help out with Fashion Week. Those agencies have a lot of clients that they kind of manage the shows for. So I would start by trying to reach out to those agencies, tell them you're going to be in town, let them know you're interested in shows, ask if there's any, if they have any new clients, if they have any presentations. Presentations are easier to get into. So try and build a relationship with those agencies. Those agencies will be the gatekeepers for the most exclusive shows that you want to go to. And if you can start this season by helping them out, by going to some of their less attended, less desirable shows and giving them coverage, that is a good place to start. So start by trying to early on build relationships with those big agencies. Another opportunity is brands that do presentations. Pretty easy to find the fashion calendar, figure out what brands are doing presentations, try and get a contact at that brand. What that means is a presentation is going to be 2 or 3 hours where the doors are open, where you can come and go as you please. There's no actual show. That means a brand can invite a lot more people to the presentation than they would to a traditional show. It means that you're much more likely to get into that. Kate Spade, I know, does a big presentation every year. J. Crew does a presentation every year. There's a lot of other brands that do it. Try and find those, get in there, cover it well. It's a good place to start. So once you have done your first Fashion Week and you've created some coverage for brands, make sure you email the brands, send them screenshots of your Insta stories, send them Instagram posts that you've done, blog posts that you've done, a New York Fashion Week wrap up, whatever it might be, and then make sure you use that content next year when you reach back out. Hey, so nice to speak to you again. As you remember, I did this coverage last year. Would love to be invited to some more shows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a process. The nice thing is it happens twice a year. You're going to keep getting into better and better shows. You're going to understand the landscape a little bit more. Another good thing about getting on the kind of radar of these big agencies is they're also throwing the big parties. So go to the events. Again, try and get to those events early. Cover them on your Insta stories and your Instagram. Send the brand follow-ups. It will get easier and easier every year. Hopefully that answers some of your questions. It's a big week. It's confusing. It's hectic. It should be a whole lot of fun. It really, it's a good time. There's a lot of influencers in town. There's a lot of parties happening. Try not to take it too seriously insofar as thinking that if you don't get street styled or you don't get into the best shows, your life is over. It's a really, if anything else, it's just a good time to network, meet other influencers, shoot with other influencers, get to go to some presentations, get to go to some shows, start building those relationships, and who knows, years down the line, you might be at the Marc Jacobs show. So, get to go to some presentations, a good time to network a little bit more, Question. Question says, as a person of color, how do you stand out more with brands when their aesthetic might not fit to include you? Great question. I'll start out by saying that as a person of color, I think that fashion and beauty in general ignored people of color for years and years, and that has been a driving force in the rise of the influencer. I'll specifically speak about beauty, that I think the reason makeup tutorials took off so much in beauty in the early days was that traditional fashion magazines ignored people of color, people from different races, people of different nationalities, and when they spoke about doing your makeup, doing a cat eye, doing a smoky eye, whatever it might be, they really just focused on doing those things if you're a white girl, essentially. And so because this group was, this whole group of people were ignored by traditional fashion media, they had to kind of come up with it themselves. So I think that fashion ignoring these groups has been fuel on the fire of kind of helping the influencer space grow, because people that are in the groups that were traditionally ignored look for people that look like them, that face the same, that kind of have the same styles, that might have, again, doing a cat eye is different if you're South Korean or if you're African American, and it's certainly different than if you're, the white girl that Vogue is kind of using to show a tutorial. And so it makes sense that you look to people for advice that look like you, that face the same kind of issues that you have, that kind of have the same style that you do. So there's that. I think that in that way, being a person of color is a strength, because you have a niche that you can speak to. Now, if a brand has not been, in the past, has not been inclusive, if you look at a brand and say, I feel like I don't fit into their aesthetic because of the color of my skin, because of my nationality, I do think that you can look at that as an opportunity to help them open that door, to say, hey, I've noticed that you don't work with, people of color as much as in the past. I love your brand. I think my followers would love your brand. I would love to kind of help tell that story. I think that we've talked about this in the past of using the things that make you different to your advantage. I think this is a great example of that. I say that as, a white man who has no idea what the experience of being a minority is like. And so I take my advice potentially with a grain of salt, but I would think that you could use that to your advantage. And I wouldn't get too hung up on those brands that don't, don't see that as an opportunity. I think that, given the climate of the world today, brands should be seeing that as an opportunity. They should be jumping at the chance to work with people that look different, that talk different, that have different style than their traditional person that they've worked with. I hope that 2018 is more about inclusiveness. It feels like there is a tide, that things are changing, and that we are becoming more and more open and inclusive as a society, and I hope that advertisers have that as well, and I hope that you can help tell them that story, and if not, if they're not ready or they don't want to hear that, then I would just move on to the next one. Things are changing, and that a little bit more, so we might be at the mark. The last question is as we go into 2018, as an influencer, what should I be doing? What should I be thinking about to try and better myself for this year? I think, going into a new year, it does offer you the opportunity to kind of look out over the next year and think about what you want to accomplish. And it's easy to say, well, I want to grow from 50,000 to 75,000. I want to work with these brands. I want to do these things. I want all of these things. And all of those things are great, and we should be setting goals, and we should be setting numerical goals that we can judge ourselves against at the end of the year, and we should be pushing ourselves to achieve more. But you also have to think about the things that go into achieving those goals. A lot of time that is learning a new skill, Tim and I were building a presentation today for an upcoming 4U that we have. If you're in New York, keep an eye out for the 4U invite. If you don't get one, message Tim at Fohr, and we'll make sure you get an invite to the upcoming 4U. But we were going through, we were looking at some influencers who are creating this incredible content in it, and we were talking about how not enough people challenge themselves to learn new things that are difficult. It's one thing to say, oh, I want to try and do more video. That's a difficult skill to learn, certainly, but that's just, pointing a phone at yourself and talking potentially is doing video. We were looking specifically at this account of this guy, Quinn, out of London. Tim will throw it up with a link here, but he does some really cool, kind of clever Photoshop stuff. He really pushes himself in his sponsored posts specifically to do something special and do something different. And I think all of us could be pushing ourselves to learn a skill that is takes more than a couple weeks to master. You know, thinking about, I want to be a better photographer. I mean, look at what Jamie Beck has done. Obviously, she's on a completely different level than 99.9% of the world, but she has dedicated herself to taking still lifes, essentially, for the last 10 months. And she's gotten really, really good at it, but she's done it every single day, and she's worked really hard at it. And yes, her first still life that she took, 10 months ago is better than anything I could do probably if I worked on it for months and months, and it was her first try. But she's gotten so much better than that, and she really has pushed herself, and she's dives into Renaissance painting, and she's pulling inspiration from that. She is, working on her Photoshop skills and getting better at that. She didn't know Photoshop 10 years ago. 5 years ago, she really didn't know Photoshop that well. It's something she's taught herself because she was limited. She saw the art she wanted to create, but she was limited by her skills in Photoshop to be able to create it. So I encourage all of you to get inspired by somebody who's better than you and figure out the skills that you need to be able to get to their level and try and learn those skills. And one easy way is copying people. Looking at something and saying, okay, I'm going to try and recreate that this week or this weekend. And you don't have to publish it. I'm not saying you should go out and copy people. If you do publish it, I would say hat tip to this person who I am, trying to learn from, and so I'm trying to recreate this photo. Don't just copy it and don't, give them credit. But push yourself to try and learn a skill that's outside the comfort zone, and that when you look at something, if you could look at a video or a photo and say, I have no idea how they did that, and then you could try and learn how to do that, that's probably a good place to start. Because I look at Jamie's photos and I say, I have no idea how she did that. But if I was a photographer and I wanted to shoot like that, I would work every day to try and recreate it. I could look at, Claire Marshall. Hey, Claire has really great editing in her YouTube videos. I look at it and say, I don't know how she did that. I would figure that out. Start there, see where it takes you. Get better, not just bigger in 2018. Content in it, because I would just move on to the next one.